Hello, everybody. We're live. This is Virtually Connecting, live at OpenEd, and we are going straight to our on-folk. Take it away.
Hello there. We're having a party.
Hey. I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm David Kernohan. I'm from the UK. I'm perhaps moderately known in this field for being the funder representative for the UK OER project that ran in the UK from 2008 to 2012.
Hi, I'm Viv Rolfe. I would describe myself as an open educator. I've been sharing health and science resources for about 10 years now, and it's an honour to be at this conference and have your mind blown at every turn by the great innovations going on.
And I am the man with no attribution, Alan Levine.
And we should probably have done costumes as well, actually. Viv, take us through your look.
Well, I'm hoping you can spot by my amazingly crafted costume there that took days to create. I'm supposed to be a MOOC platform. I don't know how clear that is. I'm a British Frisian.
MOOC platform, and I'm honouring the a major role in which the early to mid 80s music of Kenny Loggins has played in this movement. I am keeping the fire today.
So let's introduce the folks who are online. Do you want to start, Clint?
Hi, good to see you guys. Hi, David. Hi, Viv. Hi,
Hey.
Alan. Clint Lalonde. I'm Manager of Educational Technologies at BC Campus in Victoria, British Columbia this morning.
We miss you, Clint.
We miss you.
Yeah.
I miss you guys too.
Okay, who's next?
Helen?
Hi, Helen DeWard, Central Ontario, Faculty of Education, working with teachers to learn how to use digital technologies and media literacies. Good morning.
Fantastic. Nice to meet you.
And Jonathan?
So I'm Jonathan Reese, and I'm coming to you live from the Center for Teaching and Learning at Colorado State University, Pueblo, where many
MOOCs forever! MOOCs forever!
Don't talk to that.
Many people are having breakfast, so I'll mostly be mute, but I will cut in if I actually have something to say.
I'd just like to say that Jonathan has recently written a book called Education is Not an App, which is available from, I think it's Taylor and Francis, at a very reasonable price. And I actually read the book on the way over on the plane, and it's great, so I'd strongly recommend it if you want to read it.
Oh my gosh, David, you're the man.
The book's not available as an app?
Yeah, some of that.
Oh, that's very clever. No, we never thought of that, but my co-author's around here somewhere. I'll ask him about it in a moment.
Tell him I say hi.
Jonathan, you're supposed to hold up a copy now.
I didn't. Shockingly enough, I didn't do this for book promotion.
Oh, okay.
He does not give faint praise.
It's a good book. It's worth reading.
Thank you.
The stuff on licensing in particular is excellent. I really enjoyed that section.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
That is my brilliant co-author. Maybe we can get him to make an appearance before this is over. Oh, look at that.
You never know who will photobomb. There's a guy here dressed as David Wiley. It's perfect.
There's actually quite a lot of guys here that are dressed as David Wiley, I think. It's a common look.
Well, the David Wiley look is CC BY, so anyone can use it as long as they attribute it to him.
I thought he was public domain.
Yeah, zero. CC zero, apparently.
Lorna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Lorna Campbell, and I'm dialing in from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, where I work as OER liaison. But I've been working in the field of open education for quite a long time. And I used to work with David on the UK OER programme.
Okay, I'm going to let you finish, Lorna, but you didn't just work with me on that program. You were an enormous part of that A lot more people need to realize and value the work Lorna has done, especially bringing in the more technical aspects, the kind of interoperability that we need to start thinking about at this point. Lorna's way ahead of you on that. So talk to Lorna and follow her on Twitter and read her blog.
Thanks, David. I don't pay him for this, you know.
You should.
Beautiful. Maha, good morning. Can Maha hear us?
Good morning. Hi. This is Maha Bali from the American University in Cairo, and I have not written a book. So you have to say something nice about me that isn't about a book, David.
This lady writes some of the most amazing blog comments I have ever seen. If you write a blog and you got a comment from Maha, you're going to have to rethink everything. You're going to have to get in there, and you're going to... I actually really value the work she's doing on amplifying the voices of people who come from the global south, from countries that are less traditionally associated with what has become known as the university system. There's a lot of history in there it's great to go into, and I will be talking a little bit about that today, drawing on the work of Maha, and also Laura Cernovich is one of my heroes too.
And we probably wouldn't all be on this call if it wasn't for Maha, so.
Yes, yeah, indeed.
AK?
Hello, everyone. My name is AK. I am your virtual buddy today. I'm coming to you from Salem, Massachusetts. And Maha, in our Slack group, we've come up with a book title. Now we just need to write the book. So I guess we have to get right on that.
Get moving, yeah. Nice to meet you.
So what do you get Open Ed? What is one of the big takeaways, given that today is the last day?
Big takeaway. Well, actually, there's been so much. I think it's been quite an overwhelming one. I think we've seen a seismic shift from the themes of the work last year and the diversity that has been at this conference this time. There were 7 sessions this time that responded to some of the criticisms from the last conference about the lack of research and sort of theoretical underpinning. So there have been 7 talks just around that, and that's been fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's the diversity that's jumped out for me, and also it's like what is still not here, and what is still not here are people really making connections between open and inclusivity. So there was one session on inclusive design, but not so much about open sort of segueing into that, and open as a way of facilitating that, which to me is always such an obvious connection. But it's still not here at the conference. So yeah, it's been a mind-blowing one. So
I think another trend we are starting to see some I mean, there's always been a lot of research in this field, a lot of efficiency studies, but we're starting to see some stuff come through that's actually really, really high quality research. Actually, one of the pushes that's been coming from the floor, I always look for floor pushes. A lot of people are talking about the need to start sharing this data openly, the need to start sharing the research openly. So, I mean, not just looking at open education, but seeing that as a component of a wider open academic practice, which I know is something Lorna was talking about 6 years ago, but I think that the rest of the world is starting to catch up here. So that's been really encouraging. Exactly, yeah. Practice what you preach, absolutely, that if you're doing research and you've got data, I mean, people can use that data, people can re-query that data and look for new things in it. But if the data's not been shared openly, that they can't do that. So it's a big loss.
And actually, the interesting, some of the papers that have been presenting around, you know, are we being critical enough? There were 3 presentations, including my own, might say, but also Paul Bond and Martin Weller, that for the first time, I've seen an acknowledgement of the history of some of the publications that are out there, and building on the enormous volume of really good quality work from the 1970s, and drawing some of those parallels from what went on then. But that, again, that's the first time. We don't practice what we preach. So I think, the message is back to the communities. Well, why aren't we acknowledging what's gone before? Why aren't we building on past practice? And we're all about attribution, right? We got the man sat here, Mr.
There was an idea last night, right?
No attribution.
There was an
but
idea.
People aren't acknowledging the work that's gone before. So there's some interesting disconnects going on.
What was the idea?
Well, the idea last night was to at least just to capture some of these historical papers and maybe form a little posse that can do some kind of synthesis to draw out some of the insights. Really, the technology wasn't there, and kind of the processes were different, but the ambitions were the same. Really staggeringly similar about open driving our pedagogy and our education system.
It's almost like putting together a set of, almost required readings for the class that is open education. And I think they would be really interesting to look back through the history, look at the wider literature, look at stuff like blog posts as well. Everybody, for instance, needs to read David Wiley's 5 Hours blog post. It's just actually one of those essential founding texts of the field that actually underpins all of the ideology. There's a couple of questions coming in that I'm just going to have a look, and I agree entirely, Lauren, that there are a lot of different histories of open education. It kind of came from a lot of places. It's kind of going to a lot of places. I'm talking this morning in about 10 minutes about the links between the history of open education and the history of bibliometrics. Now, you wouldn't think that they've got a common thread in their history, but they have, and that is part of what I'm teasing out, and also trying to get people to publish openly, damn it.
I think there's been a bit of a recognition, like there was at the UK OEL conference in Edinburgh, that we also are quite siloed and we don't draw on sort of neighbouring disciplines much. And David's presentation, or part of it at the Edinburgh conference, or did some weird blood diagrams that I can visualise better than I can explain.
Semantometrics,
you can show that whether people are sort of interacting and citing and referencing within a discipline or outside of it, and we are very, very siloed and not drawing on the expertise of some of sort of the neighbouring disciplines.
And the idea of an open academic graph, the idea of access to that network of citations and that not actually being a proprietary good as it currently is, that's going to be really important in connecting together a lot of different disciplines and just driving better science, really, I guess.
So 2 questions come to mind, and one of them is very self-centered, and I apologize for that. So the first question is, in terms of tenure and promotion, has there been any talk at the conference about the value of open in tenure and promotion? Because I get a sense, at least from my little microcosm, that our faculty are expected to publish in closed journals because those are seen as inherently stronger, more exclusive, whatever. Whereas contributions to open access journals, depending on your field, of course, doesn't necessarily seem as, I don't know, quote, rigorous. Any strands of that at the conference?
Yeah, maybe as a little sub-theme that's come up a couple of times. I just feel like I'm actually going to be keeping plugging my session that I'm going to in 2 minutes, but that's something, again, I'm touching on about the pressure. An interesting reading in this area is The Metric Tide, which is a report by James Wilsden, which looks at the use of metrics in those kind of decisions. And there are some horror stories. These things are killing people. These things are destroying careers. These things are setting back the course of research. These things are meaning that voices are being lost, that research is not accessible, and we need to sort this out.
I think that's an important point, David, and I think it kind of harks back to the point that I was making earlier about different histories of open education and how open education has developed very differently. It looks very different depending on where you're coming from. And I know that Audrey Waters has spoken a lot about the engineered histories of open education that are very much, it's a Silicon Valley narrative. But I think, history is always unreliable to some degree. And I think it's, that the narrative that Audrey talks about is one particular form of an unreliable history, but we all have our own unreliable histories as well. And I think, again, open education will look very different from the US than from the UK, as you know, and also from other parts of the world. And I think that we have more awareness of how open education has developed quite differently in different countries, and but also just understanding the interplay of these different histories and what we can learn from each other. Because I mean, as you know yourself, the whole issue of open textbooks is hugely significant in the US, not so important at all in the UK. But not yet. But again, it's knowing where these different histories interconnect.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been striking. I mean, myself and Viv, we got a chance to catch up with TJ Bliss from the Hewlett Foundation. And he described the UK approach to OER as being really idiosyncratic, which I think actually,
that's fair enough. It's true.
Very different approach, but the same could be said to approaches in lots of other countries. And I think that there is some danger of the US narrative kind of slightly drowning the other narrative. They've done a lot of incredible work in policy. I mean, Cable Green is over there. Cable Green sat over there. And he's been driving a lot of changes behind the scene in US government. You've had Hal Plotkin as well, has been doing some incredible stuff. And although that work is fantastic, it's not the way it works in every country. And I think actually one way in which this conference could learn from this year is to look at the lived experience of these projects and this advocacy in different countries.
Agree.
I'm going to have to go.
David.
I'm really, really sorry.
No, don't apologize.
It's been great to catch up with you all. And
Hope your session goes well, David.
I think it will. B13.
Okay, we'll see you down there, 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Are you going to stick around?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I need to get photos up.
This aspect of forgotten knowledge, in a sense, is really fascinating to me, because one of the sort of acts of resistance, if you call it that way, is I'm thinking of using only open access or mostly open access sources for my dissertation in terms of my lit review, and everybody's saying you shouldn't do that, you should check all the closed journals. And while I agree with it that to some extent, I'm thinking, well, even in closed journals, people forget this knowledge and then they make it like they've discovered the world. So I'm kind of wondering, what do people think about that, going exclusively open access in terms of making a point?
There's a little bit of risk.
Well, I think it all comes down to almost stigma still, doesn't it? I mean, especially in the UK, you know, open access journals are frowned upon. They're not as perceived as of having the weight. You know, I wouldn't get my top professors in my team publishing in open access journals. So I think there's a lot of barriers to overcome. I think what is interesting is the approaches that David is talking about, and that's part of some of the JISC work as well, looking at the citations and really unpicking that. It's almost a mythology that has arisen around sort of the power of the paper. And I think when that data and that understanding and research starts to come out, I think it will blow open the doors, and it links back to what you were saying before about, you know, people getting rewarded and recognized for this work. I think once we blow the sort of the publication mythology, we will all be hopefully working in a bit more of an open way, but where that reward will come from, I'm not sure.
I absolutely agree with that 100%, because I think, you know, that we talk a lot about open practice, but I think, you know, we are still rewarded in very sort of traditional ways for, you know, through very traditional routes. I mean, I've never worked as an academic by choice, although I've worked in higher education all my life. I've always been something that is not an academic. So I tend not to publish journal papers because it's not the way I work. I publish blog posts. It does mean I always go from one short contract to the next, to the next, to the next. And I think you do this sort of trade-off between, you know, do you want to get into the sort of that particular academic career path that will force you into publishing and publishing through these very traditional routes, but might eventually give you some kind of job security? Or do you end up doing the more kind of like focus projects, blogging, that kind of side of things, which is not going to get you tenure ever, but has a bit more flexibility to it? And I think, you know, it's almost like despite academic structures, we haven't actually changed the academic structure at all, really. I think we're just trying to find different routes through it and around it. And I don't know.
You'd like to believe it's this incremental change that maybe in a generation, which sounds kind of sad, that it won't.
You would hope
that you won't have to be making this distinction, that it'll be so, it'll still be on a mixed spectrum, but we won't be having to constantly be talking about it as an issue.
But I kind of feel like in this time, in this niche of people of the kind who are at Open Ed and the digital pedagogy, and this niche of us already regard others of highly, even if they don't publish in journals at all. So I mean, there's a difference between publishing in open access journals and not publishing peer-reviewed stuff altogether. And people like Audrey, for example, is very highly respected in our field. But this goes back to that thing about edtech being a discipline, and the problematics of that is that it would push away a lot of really, really influential, good people who know what they're doing, and whom we would rather read than read those peer-reviewed journals that get published a month, not just a month, like a year later, when it's too late to even read that anymore because the technologies have changed and everything has changed. But I just want to go back to something that the question that AK was asking is, I think when you say you do it to make a point, I think you need to be really clear on whether doing that would actually make your point. And I think you could talk about in your literature review, I would have liked to do X, Y, and Z because that's how it would fit my philosophy of my thesis. But that didn't work because a lot of people who care about X, Y, and Z ended up publishing it in closed journals, and those are good articles that I'd like to mention. I wish they had been open access journals. But most people in Europe, I think, and possibly in the UK as well, managed to do the gold open access option, which I think is ridiculous, obviously, because the government pays for the research, then they pay the journals, and then the institution pays the journals, which is, I mean, crazy. But at least, you know, I know people like the University of Edinburgh people, everything they publish, you know, Sean Bain and Jen Ross, they publish their stuff open access, even if it's in a closed access journal. So there's also that.
Maybe AK can do some A/B testing with publishing.
It's a thought. I mean, if you go to Google Scholar, there are things that pop up there as PDFs that are not in open access journals because people put them on their ResearchGate account or their academia.edu account, and who knows the technical legality of that. I mean, it's their work, so they should be able to do it anyway. But it's an interesting concept. I think personally,
well, there might be green. They might be green open access. You know that option where you're publishing in a closed journal, but you can. There's a way to search for them directly. By the way, that Lise Callerup-Bissett posted on Prof Hacker. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's good. I think it's one of those things. Who was talking about it? There was in a I think Athabasca session with Alec Kouros, who said, well, if you're on the tenure track and you need to get tenure, you do what you do to get tenure, and then you can take a stand. And I think that's where doctoral students might be as well, despite their open predispositions.
So I just want to jump in here with a thought. It almost feels to me like we're seeing a world that's starting to bifurcate between a world of open and sharing that's allowed by the new network connectivity that's available in the world, and a world that's essentially regressive and trying to hold on to a world of scarcity of information, closed access. And my question is really tenure part of that old world? Tenure kind of a notion of associating with an institution your authority as an expert comes from your association with that institution, with the rank and the title that you have, versus a world in which you compete on the quality of your ideas and how people respond to them. I'd be interested in people's thoughts on that.
No, I think you're absolutely right there. I think there's this, I mean, it's such a fascinating time. We wouldn't have this conversation 10 years ago, but I think we're working in sort of very old fashioned structures and promotional structures. And, I could never get a promotion within my organization based on the type of research I do and the way I publish it. I just don't fit that criteria. So I think there's an awful lot that has to change, but it actually is changing. And I think it's changing at a pace. And I think, going back to publishing, I think, they're holding on for grim life there. So I do see sort of that sea of change. And at one point it will start to tip over, but there's an awful lot that has to change right through to our sort of personnel and HR systems, and the whole infrastructure of the university, I think, really is becoming more and more almost out of date and obsolete. And even if as we saw in the keynote this morning, which was I was lost for words. I've never cried in a keynote before. I was just crying.
Seriously.
It was all about, the costs and we have failed. And I think that more work like that will absolutely be key to us having to rethink what we're doing here. So yeah, my thoughts.
I must say, like Michael, that people who do choose to go the traditional route, they also benefit from the networked environment. So they're almost double dipping the advantage gravy boat in some ways, because they can leverage both worlds.
It's a free rider advantage in a sense.
I mean, it's not like they're doing anything malicious, but
sure,
they're making that choice.
Yeah.
We've probably got 10 more minutes before we have to nip off to David's.
You have to go on.
So Helen or Jonathan, you haven't had a chance to jump in. Is there anything you'd like to add?
It's a little loud here.
It's fine.
Tenure is about academic freedom. I mean, what you put people through to get there, I think, is irrelevant. If you talk about our book, for instance, we call on instructional designers to have academic freedom because they have an educational function. And so I think whether you publish in an open access journal or not, you deserve it if you're an educator. It's that simple. I mean, it's not whether tenure and open access are viable together. It's the choices that we make, and we should make the case that everybody deserves tenure.
And I'll jump.
No, go ahead.
I'll jump in because I am one of those contract people. I work from contract to contract, no tenure involved, and I I publish on a blog. I don't publish in peer-reviewed journals, never have, and probably never will. And the big question is, where do I find truth in academia? Where do I find the true words? And it comes back to who are my trusted sources, and the people that I listen to, the voices I hear at Open Ed, are the people who are speaking more truths in my field than potentially something I might read in a peer-reviewed journal.
Good point.
So I think, yeah, the comment around all of that is, I agree with you, and I spend far much more time reading, everyone's awesome blog posts than I do publications. But it's how then do we create that legacy and that thing that is searchable for future generations? Because actually, the publishing infrastructure does work. It gives us a means of searching and connecting and going back in time. And I think, that would be my big question at the moment. Maybe a lovely topic for a PhD is kind of validating a search strategy for, Google Scholar, and looking for other forms of sort of hidden literature. But actually then, how do we preserve that? We need a way of ensuring that what we are creating now is actually there in 5 years' time, and retrievable and citable, and that we're attributing and acknowledging.
Right. I mean, I wrote recently about digital death, and it's just realization of where all my digital stuff goes. Maybe when I die or when my credit card expires, anything could happen. But also the worry that even institutions that sometimes fund, I think this was happening in the UK, right? Was it the Joram? Joram, what's it called?
Yeah.
That have no funding anymore. And I don't know what finally happened with that.
They shut it down. It just took the decision to shut it down. It wasn't so much that there was no funding for it. It was that JISC, who ran it, decided to close it. So it was.
And then what happened to the resources? What happened to the resources that were there?
People were allowed to take their resources off the platform. Some resources were migrated to a new platform. They went through them all and they chose some to be moved to a new platform, which is now called the JISC Store. And the JISC Store mixes open educational resources and paywalled resources.
There's the archiving and preservation of the things, but not get too mushy here, but I mean, people live on through the story. In Viv's presentation, she was basically saying there's this era of really fantastic research that people don't even talk about anymore. So the stuff dies when we stop remembering it. So, Maha, even if your blog disappears, your story will go on for a long time because the people you touch. And I'm not saying that to be nice. Well, I am saying it to be nice because you're a great person. But that's the network effect that has nothing to do with physical networks. Is that we remember this important stuff. And, there's a new generation. I hate to be saying I sound like a freaking old person, but there's a younger generation of ed tech people here who it's great to see come up and be very excited and interested in the history of the field, whether it has a discipline or not, and seeing the value of experiences that everybody here has contributed to this space. So the website might go up in a puff of bits, but people will remember you for a long time.
I think it's that the value of the oral tradition in EdTech is a really interesting aspect to think about and, research, write, continue to talk about, because digital and oral seem to be a little at odds with one another, oral being this community-based analog, around the campfire type medium, and digital being us being distributed. But I've had that experience with things like proto-LMS. Had some faculty members who recently retired who used to program for these things, but there are no books written about it. So they tell us those stories of what it was like to program learning modules for those proto-LMSs using VAX terminals, for example, which is really fascinating. And nobody else is going to know about it because we're not telling the stories.
And there's an emotional, we were moved by Sarah's, and it was a great talk, but it was like, damn, this stuff got down to our guts here. I remember when Gardner Campbell said bags of gold, and and so the memory lives in emotions of the moment too.
I wonder if maybe one of the reasons why this idea of oral tradition really resonates with us is because perhaps the strength of open education and education technology is not in the technology at all, it's in the network. And it's in the connections between the people, not the connections between the technology. And that basically is an oral tradition. And that's, I think, maybe why it does resonate with us.
And people who do this work says,
they're so important. That's quite often where you do get the authentic voice coming through.
Yeah, and there's an intensity of experience that increases going from the brain to the heart to the gut. And so, all of them drive us, and academia comes so much from up here.
I think we're onto something there.
It's interesting how it shifted, and then there's been several presentations that have looked at, the research literature and themes that have come and gone. And actually, David last year presented here sort of more blob pictures about, topics that come and go. And you think, well, is that because we're not focusing on that anymore, or actually we're part of an evolution? We don't often see that, some of the early sort of 2005-6 papers around open were all about the technology and the infrastructure and the technology that will remove the barriers. But actually, there's probably no presentations this time at all on what that technology should be or looks like. But I think you're right from what we've kind of moved beyond that, and it's about the community, and that we work in a totally different way now, and we don't think about that technology. Perhaps we should dip back into it.
Yeah, I think you could be right.
More metadata.
Somebody had to say it.
Some clown.
Well, I think we're over time at this point. We probably should look at wrapping up. AK, we got some fantastic commentary, so really appreciate everyone's participation.
And thank you for bearing with us.
Yeah, thank you. It was a bit of a late night.
And a reminder, there is another session at 11:15 to look out for. I hear that it's going to be also excellent, just like every VConnecting session. So you should be watching if you are not watching now. So thank you, everybody, for joining the virtual session. Thank you for joining from OpenEd 16. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this in the future, thank you for watching. And catch us at future Virtually Connecting sessions. Goodbye and be well.
Bye. Thanks for organizing.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.